Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I am super fucking hyped to bring you guys the new patch notes for 5 new tier 2 characters. Holy fucking Toledo. I am like so fucking excited to dissect these with you guys and give you all of my thoughts and predictions because these are some of the best. These are some of the best patch notes I've read in a long time, guys. This is not new content, but the content that they're putting out for existing characters in the form of tier 2 upgrades are fucking top notch. I just have to say right off the top, kudos to Netmarble. This feels like the most balanced, the most like up to date with the current meta changes I have ever seen announced for tier 2 characters. None of these are broken to hell, and none of them are fucking like wet noodles in the making, fucking wet towels at the spa status. Shout out Crossbones. These are like perfect. If I could have designed these myself, I would have done a shittier job than these guys. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I would have done a shittier job because they obviously know more about the game than I do. But I just mean I could not have foreseen a better result to these tier 2s than we're getting today. So for that reason specifically, but also because of how badass some of the tier 2s are, I am really, really excited and happy that we're getting this. So let's dive right into it, guys. Let's check out what we're getting. Green Goblin, including his uniform, which will be more relevant later on in the video. Warwolf or fucking this guy. Elsa and Blade are getting their tier 2s. Now, I did say 5 characters are getting their tier 2s, but as you can see, there are only 4 characters. Well, there are 5. Shut up. I can count up to single-digit numbers. It gets dicey at double digits, but I'll explain why a little bit later in the video after I charge up my fucking Spirit Bomb, why there are 5, but really there are 4, but really there are 5. It's kind of a mindfuck, kind of 2 girls, 1 cup territory. We're not gonna get into that though, guys. We're a wholesome, family-oriented channel. Fuck that shit, that dirty fucking shit. So here we go. First of all, Elsa is getting this badass tier 2. What does the tier 2 do? Well, when she uses her no escape skill or the red flame skill, they should have just reworded this. When she uses her fucking 6-star skill, you fucking dumbasses. It's her 6-star skill. When she uses her 6-star skill, she has these 3 things applied to her character immediately. Immune to all damage for 5 seconds, 24% guaranteed dodge for 10 seconds, and 100% chance to pierce with a barrier effect for 10 seconds. So I'm not totally clear on what that pierce with barrier effect means. Maybe that goes through super armor. Maybe that goes through like immune to all damages, or maybe it just goes through like invincibility but not invulnerability, or immunity rather. So it's kind of, I'm not really sure that, I don't think I've seen that barrier effect tag listed in the game yet. If I have, sorry for forgetting it. The guaranteed dodge is dope, and keep in mind those first 2 last for 10 seconds, but the cooldown on this is only 3 seconds. Now, you're saying the cooldown is 3 seconds, holy shit, that's like way too fast, but it only activates when she uses the skill, and the only other way of triggering the skill faster than it cools down is if you use the team up skill, but you can only use the team up skill in certain situations, and it has its own much longer cooldown of like 90 seconds or something like that. So you don't really have to worry about that. Her 6-star skill, her native no escape or red flame, has a base duration or a base cooldown of 13 seconds. So with max cooldown time, you can bring that down to 6.5 seconds. So you're still a 3.5, I would probably say comfortably, a 4-second window from when you can have this blood transfusion effect take place again. But keep in mind, she's going to be immune to damage for 5 seconds from when that is cast. So you guys can see, how things work out. She's basically going to be vulnerable for about 1.5 to 2 seconds, kind of like Carnage, but it ends up being more than that in the long run. But I just think the immunity on her most used skill is just like insane. I think that's dope. She definitely did not need any more damage, so I'm glad they didn't go that route with her. She just needed more survivability. This is exactly what she needed. I'm so tempted to tier 2 my Elsa because she's ready, and I can use my ticket as soon as this patch drops because I have a ticket saved up from the Gwenpool thing, and my Elsa's at 20 on all her gears. So I'm really hyped. I'm giving Elsa like an A+ to like an A++ on the tier 2. Very, very awesome. Perfect, totally fits the character. That's like a Carnage level tier 2, basically. It's just fucking amazing. Then we have Werewolf. this fucking hairy motherfucker. He's getting a really good, a very clever, I would say a very fitting tier 2. So Werewolf is kind of a strange character. He doesn't have, he doesn't do anything well. I mean, his passive is pretty cool in that he regenerates HP. But other than that, his damage is pretty mediocre. Even with his self buff, he's really not that great as a DPSer. He doesn't have any immunity. He doesn't have any 6-star skills. Or sorry, iframes on his skills. So basically, he's just a buff, right? He's just a buff character. So why not just make him your leader as well? So now his tier 2 is going to give the whole fucking team 30% increased crit damage and 20% increase to all critical rate. What that 20% means is that whatever your crit chance is, it will add a flat 20% to that. So it's not like a percent of a percent. It's not 20% of what you have. It just goes up by 20. So if you have a character with a 45% crit rate, if Werewolf is the leader, they suddenly have a 65% crit rate. That's fucking insane. Not to mention the fact that his buff, his 6-star Howling at the Moon, whatever, you know, fucking Jared Leto to Mars, fucking 6-star skill, gives you another all attack crit rate buff. And on top of that, his native leadership gives you a crit rate and crit damage buff when the enemy has less than 30% health, which is fucking outrageous. This guy is going to be like, he's probably going to have the second or third best leadership behind like Ronan Thanos and like She-Hulk, because the damage that you put out with this guy is going to be absolutely insane. I'm not a mathematician, all right? I didn't go to carpenter school, but I would bet that there are some, you know, people of Asian descent who could calculate that Werewolf with this update probably has the best leadership for a properly geared team in terms of maximizing your DPS, because that crit rate and crit damage is insane. Plus his leadership, like native leadership, plus his 6-star buff, you could get like crazy numbers, like fucking crazy fucking numbers. So again, I think it's a super fitting tier 2 for Werewolf. I think it fits the character really well. I think it fits, like, it doesn't try to make the character something that he's not. It doesn't try to make him suddenly a tank or suddenly like a DPSer himself. He stays in his lane, all right? He's a support character, he's a utility character, and it's basically just cranking that up to the next level. And I could not be more satisfied with it, not only in the way that it plays out in the game, but also in the way that it fits the character. So very, very good update, very, very good tier 2. I'd probably give that as well an A or an A+ for sure. Here we go with Blade. He's got an apply to self buff of 40% skill damage and 25% increased bonus damage. Pretty run of the mill. He just gets a big like DPS bump. And then he gets an ignore dodge of 30%. 30% is not bad at all. It's not that great, but it's not that bad. Pairing it with an obelisk, you can get up to like 60-70%. Pairing it with bullseye, you get up to 80%. So that'll make Blade a lot more useful, especially in stuff like Shadowland, or maybe even a little bit in Alliance battle, because his 6-star skill has a lot of like AoE, kind of like Green Goblin's 6-star skill. They're similarly animated and similarly like they move around similarly. So I think it's a pretty good update for him. They're also doing another update to Blade, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but I'll come back to this one tentatively. But for now, I'd say this is a solid like B+. This is just, you know, it's I think it's on the higher level. It's a bit of a not a power creep, but it's a bit of a power bump on some of the other ones, like for example Iron Man or War Machine. It's a little bit better than some of those. I think ignore dodge is better than defense penetration, especially since we're only seeing defense penetration rates like 10 and 15%. And the ignore dodge is great because it ignores regular dodge from like Shadowland mobs and stuff like that, and Shadowland bosses, but also the ignore dodge, as we know, works on the guaranteed dodge of characters like Ant-Man. So it's definitely useful for PvP and stuff like that. So Blade is definitely coming back into relevance once again. Now here is where we get into the it's 4 but it's really 5 conversation. And I really love, this is probably the thing I love the most, aside from Elsa's tier 2. This is the thing that I love the most about this tier 2 update. They're actually giving the different Green Goblins different tier 2 passives. Now this has a lot of implications, but let's talk about what they are first, and then we'll talk about the implications. So the classic Green Goblin, you're, you know, Spider-Man dangling Mary Jane over the fucking bridge. I think that's a Brooklyn Bridge, and then dropping her into like a parallel universe or whatever. That Green Goblin, he's getting a 45% poison damage buff and a guaranteed dodge of 30%. So this is a little bit better than Black Widow's tier 2, and I don't really understand why, because like they're basically the same character before they get their tier 2s. Of course, Black Widow has her iframe on her 6-star skill, but as you guys will see, Green Goblin's getting that back on his 6-star skill. So to me, this is kind of like power creep to me. It's 45% instead of whatever 25% lightning damage, and then I think the guaranteed dodge is the same or just a little bit lower, but that 45% is huge. You basically do not have to use a poison obelisk on Green Goblin because the poison damage caps out at 75 anyways. I mean, you could, but you might find a better obelisk for him. So I think that's a really good tier 2, coupled with the fact that they're going to be changing Green Goblin's classic 6-star skill to be an iframe. It sounds like from the way I read it. I think Green Goblin tier 2 is going to be pretty fearsome and definitely like a huge DPS, sudden DPS monster like Black Widow. Then the ultimate Green Goblin. He's getting an increase of fire damage of 45%, which again is huge. And then he's getting super armor, all defense 15%. I don't really give a shit about that. I think that's pretty useless. His passive, his regular 4-star passive, or his uniform activation bonus. Sorry. His uniform activation bonus gives him that 84% chance when he's hit to be immune to damage for like 2 or 3 seconds. And it's got like a 5 or 6 second cooldown. I don't know what it is, but anyways. This basically just makes him tankier, but he still has the problem that he can just get bursted down anyways, and his uniform bonus is not going to help him there. This just makes him slightly tankier. He's still going to need like a healing obelisk and a healing set or something like that to make use of the uniform bonus enough and properly in order for it to make effect in a long, drawn-out fight, because as we know, Ultimate Green Goblin has really low DPS. Maybe with this fire damage buff and then like another fire obelisk with like defense pen or dodge ignore or something like that, he could be like a lot higher in terms of DPS. But the problem that Ultimate Green Goblin has is, while he is tanky, his DPS is so low that it just doesn't matter. You will kill him way before he kills you. So hopefully this tier 2 will help him, make him a little bit tankier in the moments where he's not invulnerable. But then also the more important thing is to address his really low DPS. So hopefully that will take effect. What I want to talk about here about Green Goblin here, it says Green Goblin's classic skill, Aerial Charge, will not get hit by enemy in certain animation. So the wording on that is not very good, I'm not going to lie, but I think what it means is that kind of like Falcon's 6-star skill, there will be like brief periods of iframe, and also like Carnage's 6-star skill before he's tier 2. So it's even though the whole skill appears to be iframe, like an invulnerability frame, it's actually not. It's actually like a bunch of small iframes over a period of time with gaps in between. So if someone is blasting you with like a continuous beam of energy or something like that, you will take damage intermittently. Like let's say Green Goblin did his 6-star skill into Thanos' beam, he would take a couple of hits as he's going up, and then maybe he'd be invulnerable, and then on the way down or something, he'd get a couple more hits. So it makes the character a little bit tankier and a little bit safer to play, but it's not just an instant like I can dodge all of this damage here. You still need to be very careful with it. It just makes the character a little bit more survivable and a little bit more tanky. So I really do appreciate that buff, because even with his tier 2, Green Goblin would still have like a huge glass cannon asterisk over his character if it wasn't for that change. So I think that change is very definitely necessary. And so that's why I think Green Goblin's a little bit better than Black Widow, and I think that's the fairest comparison between the two, but I would probably take Green Goblin over Black Widow a little bit. Then the other thing is that Blade's leadership, the HP absorbed amount is going to change from 4% to 8%. That's a big bump, okay? That seems like a small number, but 8% is quite considerable given the damage that certain characters do nowadays. 8% is a lot. And the other caveat here is the HP recovered may change based on the character's max HP. Thank you for the Dimension Rift. So what that means, I'm guessing, is that, before it was just taking a set amount, but now it's going to vary as well based on the character's max HP. So that means that Blade's leadership could be a lot more useful in game modes where your max HP is like cranked up to fucking crazy levels, like in Battle World, where you have like 80,000, 100,000 HP. I don't think actually leaderships apply in Battle World now that I think about it, but it did strike me as an interesting thing to word, because I'm not super familiar with Blade's like leadership passive, because obviously like no one really uses it in that way, but it feels like, based on their wording and based on the fact they've bumped it from 4% to 8%, that it might be like, it might actually suddenly be an important leadership where you're like, yo, you want to clear stage 25 of Shadowland, or you want to clear Infinity Thanos with this team, like maybe Blade leadership plus Angela, because she does so much fucking damage and she can now leech 8%, is a big fucking deal. And maybe like having a max HP obelisk on someone like Angela, so she has more of an HP pool to heal back more of that damage that she's dealing, will actually be a significant like strategy. And I'm like so excited for that. Netmarble has long ignored like life leech and life drain, and thank you for the Dimension Rift. They've long ignored like that aspect of the game and that aspect of ARPGs in general, of stealing HP from your opponent and adding it to your pool or healing yourself. And I wish that more characters had like Blade's leadership or skills that did what Blade's leadership does. And I'm really excited to experiment for myself, and also to see what the community has with Blade's new buffed leadership. I wish honestly that they would have put a little bit of his leadership into his tier 2 passive. Like maybe when you tier 2 him, it bumps that number from 8 up to like 10, or maybe it like it lowers how much time between leeching. So if the cooldown is, I don't even know how long the cooldown is, but let's say the cooldown is like 10 seconds, maybe it bumps it down to like 5 seconds. I think that's a really important area of gameplay that hasn't really been explored enough yet, and it can mean that characters who do low damage but who have high survivability, like this fucking green idiot over here, if they had a life leech leadership, they could kill much stronger characters because they're so tanky and they can heal back the life that they're losing rapidly enough to offset it, and then just grind it out with their low damage and their tankiness. So I'm really excited for that. I love they call them slight tweaks to their existing skills, but I think these are major tweaks. I'm hoping that I'm not overstating them, because from what I'm reading, it makes me really excited for what's coming next. Also, guys, the Dimension Rift world bosses are being brought back. Yes, I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that when we got Shadowlands and the world boss double rifts disappeared, that was permanent, that Shadowland was just taking over the world boss double rifts, and that Netmarble felt it was too much time that we were spending on the game, that we couldn't balance both. But I guess the fact that they're saying they're going to be difficulty tweaks, it sounds like they're making it easier for us. So maybe they're going to reset the timer from back up to 5 minutes after we kill the first boss, or maybe they're going to lower the HP. I don't know, but anyways, I'm excited just to have them back. I don't care if they're going to be harder or easier. I just want to have them back. But I just want to tell the community right now, anyone who's listening, don't you fucking complain, because you read right here very easily. And if you can't read, if you're fucking Stevie Wonder, I got you, okay? For your ease of playing, you fucking idiots, the difficulty in the World Boss Dimension Rift has been adjusted, okay? Put your Pampers on. It's going to be okay. The rewards have also been adjusted. Here's the part I want to notice. To match the new level of difficulty, I do not want to see anyone complaining on Reddit or in the comments section about, why am I getting such bad rewards from the World Boss Double Rifts? These are supposed to be a challenge. Why are my rewards not, fucking like 7 tier 2 tickets? Because fuck you, you're entitled, all right? You guys complain about the difficulty. They tone it down. So yeah, the rewards have to be toned down too. They're not going to, lower the health of fucking Mephisto or Diablo in D2 or D3. They're not going to lower a boss's health. They're not going to lower, hardcore Inferno mode and then be like, yeah, but you can get the same results. You can get the same rewards, the same gold, the same loot drop tables. Yeah, it's all the same. Get all the same stuff. It's just easier now. That game is watered down and that game would suck. So I don't want to hear anybody complaining. Enough of that rant, over. Last thing I want to get into, guys, really quickly, the implications, the ramifications, all right? I would love to ram something right now. The ramifications of having these 2 tier 2s for one character. Let's get into it. First of all, on the negative side of things, I think this might be Netmarble's way of admitting that they fucked up. What I mean by Netmarble's way of admitting that they fucked up, some people feel like Green Goblin Ultimate should not have been a uniform. It changes the character so radically. They're basically two totally different characters. And of course, again, Netmarble's rationale, or so it seems, Netmarble's rationale up to now is that uniforms are about brain transfers. So even though like Lady Loki is just a uniform, we know it's not actually Loki. It's Sif's mind inhabiting Loki's body, or whatever. I don't know what's Loki's body inhabiting Sif's mind. I don't know. But anyways, it's about brain transfer, and that's why certain characters are not certain characters don't exist, but rather they're just uniforms. Okay, so I understand why the Green Goblin was a uniform, but I think that what they were trying to do stylistically clashed or contradicted what they were doing with the uniforms, because they were just introducing uniforms that were basically different people, but the same character, the same personality, the same consciousness, and so they didn't want to create a whole new character just for that consciousness. So they decided to go the route of uniforms. That's fine. But I think in doing so, they kind of goofed on this one because, like I said, Green Goblin is just these two Green Goblins they could not be more different characters. They're totally different to play, totally different in terms of what they do. One's a tank, one's a glass cannon. It's just like night and day. And so by having these these different tier 2s, they're kind of admitting that they made a mistake. And so rather than pigeonholing these two, I'm going to call them characters here. Rather than pigeonholing these two characters by making one of them good with their tier 2 and the other one fucking suck with their tier 2 because they're so different, they made two kind of similar but kind of different tier 2s. And they kind of forced their own hand with this because they couldn't give him a generic increase elemental damage buff of 45%. That would be weird. So and it would open the door to a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's kind of interesting in a way how they went about this, but it's also really good. I'm not going to shit on it. It's also really good because it opens the door later on to this happening again. So what I'm trying to say is kind of from a law perspective, the precedent has been set. Netmarble's not afraid of making two different tier 2 passives for a character that has a uniform that changes them enough. So, I mean, we didn't get it, but we could have gotten two different tier 2 passives for Vision, for example. The character doesn't play differently, but changing from Blast to Universal is a pretty big difference, considering that Universals have the damage buff that no other class has against all of the types. So we could have gotten it with someone like that, or we could have gotten it with Angela, because her first uniform fucking blows. It's got the increased damage to blast types, but it's really overshadowed by her fire uniform, the Queen of Hell or whatever. So they could have done something there stylistically. They still have an opportunity, of course. I don't think they're going to take it, but they could. And just having these opportunities and opening up the creative boundaries of the game is really, really good for the game. And I want to see them do it more, and I want to see them think outside the box more, even if it leads to more hits and misses, because that's better, not only long-term for the game's success, but also for our enjoyment. It's better. It's going to keep the game fresher for longer, and it's going to draw in more people who like creative shit, like all the hipsters and fucking weirdos who wear beanies all the time. So I'm really, really happy that they did this with the two characters. I'm overall, this is one of the best set of patch notes I've ever read since I started playing this game. Kudos to Netmarble, my hat's off, my dick's out, whatever, Harambe, everybody, they're all fucking here for you guys. They're all watching down from obviously heaven. And guys, with that being said, let me know what your thoughts are on the patch. Let me know what your thoughts are on the upcoming tier 2s, who you want a tier 2. I'm personally looking at Elsa very closely, but I'd consider Werewolf, to be honest with you. And of course, guys, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.